We are going to go in depth this Tuesday on a local businessman and a philanthropist on his new book. Now, you probably heard the Morsani name before, the man who first tried to bring baseball to the Bay Area and got so close a couple of times. Well, now he and his wife spend most of their time giving away their hard-earned fortune. Frank Morsani has a new book called To Be Frank, Building the American Dream in Business and Life. Always a gentleman, always positive. His tips now on how hard work pays off for anyone. Joining me right now, a legend in the Tampa Bay area. If you know anything about baseball, cars, anything like that, USF, UT, Okie State, oh my goodness. Frank Morsani. Frank, wonderful to see you here. You've got a new book, a book called To Be Frank. It's Living the American Dream, Building the American Dream. Frank, first of all, thank you for stopping by. You know, people don't realize, again, what a struggle it was getting baseball here. And I want to talk about that first, and then we'll talk about some of the other things that you've been doing as one of the area's biggest philanthropists. Baseball, would it have been different had you gotten the team versus Vince Namoli and that organization?
Well, I think that's conjecture on other people's part. It would have been different. We certainly have different personalities and different ideas about things, but so I probably can't answer that question. The
ironic thing is, as you were just telling me before we did the interview, is that you had the option on the property where Bright House Networks and our studios sit, which is still maybe being considered a space for the new stadium.
Well, I probably think there's two opportunities that might work. The one is at Toy Town, right here, which is right here, and maybe the in Hillsborough County, the Fairgrounds area.
Right.
Because that puts it in of all those I-4 and 275 and the various cities, Lakeland, Sarasota, all the interconnections of the highways is probably one of those two locations.
Do you think they'll stay in town?
Gee, I have no idea.
Nobody knows.
We hope they do, but I have no idea.
Frank, the neat thing about you is you've earned your money that they call the old-fashioned way. You worked it. You worked it for the Ford Motor Corporation. You worked your way up. You bought at one time up to 30 car dealerships. First of all, how could you afford to do that? And at that time that you were buying those, were those good deals?
Well, they had to be good deals, or otherwise I wouldn't have been able to buy them.
Yeah, okay. In other words, you bought low and sold high, right?
No, that's about right. Yes, sir. It was a unique time in the retail automobile business. A lot of people wanted to get out of the business. They had come along after World War II and had gotten in as franchises, but the regulations was coming in from especially the federal government, and the owners at that time were a little, they were uncomfortable, and so it gave opportunities for fellows like me to purchase their businesses.
You are now a wonderful philanthropist. How does one develop that talent? And I call it a talent for philanthropy because it's not just your heart. It's you know where to put your money where it does the most good. You gave $20 million to USF to build that wonderful new facility that's going to be in the downtown area. How do you know who to give to, and why do you give?
Well, that's two questions. So we give because it's the right thing to do, and if you and we had to change. We've tried to change our culture in our region, and I'm proud of the fact that I think it has changed. People like Tom James and Jeff Vinnick, and who have been major change, they really are change men.
Yeah.
And so it's as far as identifying where you're going to do things like this, what does the community need? So we've looked at it and say, as an example, University of Tampa is a great school.
Yeah.
USF is a great school. We made the decision with USF, especially because in the medical school, because we do have an older population and needs to be cared for, and we just thought it was an important part of life for this community.
Your philosophy is really interesting. You call it the 4 pillars of management: respect, satisfaction, recognition, and compensation. Are today's companies still following that formula? Because I'm wondering about the compensation part, and I only ask that because it seems like CEOs are making huge amounts of money, and maybe that money doesn't always filter down to the rest of the employees.
Well, the compensations are really a delicate conversation.
Oh, sure it is.
And
yeah.
And especially you're talking about the Fortune 500 companies in the state of Florida. 98% of all of our companies are small businesses.
Sure.
And there's some disparity, and so much of it we've concentrated in looking at Wall Street, and that's not where the action is.
Right.
Jobs. That's not where we take risks and so on and so forth. We call it OPM. They're using other people's money.
Oh yeah, well that's true. That's a good way to put it. Yeah.
And so they have a different mindset, I think, unfortunately, Al, than what we do as far as doing things from the grassroots companies.
Transportation is a big issue in this area, and if we're ever going to, in quotes, grow up to the great city that we could become, most people say that we've got to do something with transportation. Because I look at the bus stops and I say, there are a lot of people, you talked about our older generation, if they didn't have the buses, they'd have nowhere to get to work, nowhere to go. And the same thing with sports stadiums and stuff. Look where baseball has been successful. In New York, in Chicago, in D.C., and Atlanta, where transportation can get those folks there.
Well, our transportation is, unfortunately, probably is not going to change, meaning we're going to have to live with cars and buses because we don't have any concentration of businesses. As an example, we were talking about an automobile plant in Lima, Ohio has thousands and thousands of workers. We don't have that. We're so diversified. Our population is diversified in a large area. Hillsborough County, the largest county geographically in the state. Pinellas County, the most densely packed.
Don't I know it?
So we don't have the opportunity to create a mass transit system, and I say that without. I wish that we could have light rail. I don't think that's an option. I think we're going to have to figure things out. As an example, sports. Maybe we have staging areas where we'll have 1,000 cars come and bring people on buses to things like that. We'll probably have to relook at how we transport people, but transporting them through automobiles and buses.
And lastly, as a consumer, I worry about the moral base of our big companies, and especially the newer CEOs who've made their money in the .com business and also the industry. Is there still that same moral context within corporations to do good for people? Because your companies always did that, Frank.
Well, thank you, Al. I'm proud of that. I think that's still out there, alive and well. Unfortunately, we don't see too much of it, and that's unfortunate. Now, occasionally, we got like Zuckerman with Facebook.
Yeah.
He's looked at it. Bill Gates has looked at it, and now we have. Some of the old hands didn't look at it. Warren Buffett was never for philanthropy until a few years ago.
Yeah, isn't that funny?
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah. Well, Frank, this is such a great book. Frank Morsani, Dave Schreiber, who's written a lot of other books, helped you with a book called Building the American Dream in Business and in Life. If you're a longtime Tampa Bay resident, you've got to get this book because it'll take you back through history. And it's like sitting down and having a conversation with this man who's been a friend of ours for many, many years. Frank, always good talking to you. Folks, go out and get the book.
Thank you very much. My pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Now, here's just a small list of some of the places that Morsani has given to so far. The University of South Florida, the University of Tampa, Oklahoma State University, the Strass Center for the Performing Arts, and the Dali Museum. By the way, the book is for sale now at Barnes & Noble.